This week on Christian World News, earthquakes strike Ecuador and Japan. How CBN is rushing relief to victims along the Ring of Fire.
Plus, buried alive, trying to stop the destruction of their church. Pastor's wife in China pays the ultimate price.
How would you have described or defined a Christian?
Oh, someone who pretends to be good and judges you and believes in an invisible friend that they've created.
He didn't believe in God until he had a revelation in the strangest of places.
여러분 안녕하십니까? 크리스천 월드뉴스입니다. 얼마 전 불의 고리라고 알려진 태평양 지역에서 몇 차례의 지진이 발생했죠. 일본에서는 이틀간 2번의 지진이 발생해 건물이 파괴되고 약 50명이 사망했습니다. 바다 건너 에콰도르는 상황이 좀 더 심각한데요. 규모 7.8의 지진이 강타하면서 수백 명이 목숨을 잃었습니다. 복구 비용만 해도 수십억 달러에 이를 전망입니다. 오늘의 첫 소식 에콰도르에서 전합니다.
In Ecuador Sunday, Christians prayed for the victims of this nation's worst earthquake in decades. The powerful 7.8 quake struck Saturday night 110 miles west of Quito, the country's capital. The biggest tragedy in the last 67 years, says Ecuador's president. But there have been some miracles. Here, police reached a young girl beneath the piles of crumbled concrete. This rescuer explains the woman they're trying to save is stuck from the waist down. 4,000 miles across the Pacific on the other side of the Ring of Fire in Japan, twin earthquakes killed at least 40. 1,100 were injured in the region near Kumamoto City late Thursday and early Sunday. Collapsed roads and bridges, slowing the effort to reach victims desperate for food, water, and medicine. This father is worried about not having medicine for his daughter, who has been ill. The U.S. military is now assisting Japanese forces, and Operation Blessing is helping in both countries. In Japan, with generators, water, and food. Obi is working closely with Kumamoto Harvest Church and Pastor Koji Nakamura, whose church is in the city center close to the epicenter. And in Ecuador, Obi is setting up kitchens to serve meals to victims. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
네, 보신 것처럼 CBN의 오퍼레이션 블레싱 팀은 일본과 에콰도르를 찾아 도움의 손길을 펼치고 있는데요. 현재 필요한 실질적인 도움과 함께 영적인 도움도 주고 있다고 합니다. 계속해서 에콰도르 현지에서 전해온 소식입니다.
These survivors of last week's quake have been waiting in line all day for a food truck to deliver supplies. As of 5 p.m., the truck had not arrived, and tempers were starting to flare.
We need a lot of things, especially food, meal, water. There's no water.
There's no water in the tap. How do we bathe or drink? What little they are giving out isn't nearly enough.
The scale of this disaster makes quick response very difficult. Many of those affected are in remote areas along the coast, now reachable only by air. These Ecuadorian Air Force helicopters are struggling to get enough aid to small villages near the epicenter of the quake. CBN accompanied this flight to the town of Hama.
Now we're going to wait for them to unload the helicopter, turn around and go right back where we came from.
Soldiers quickly unloaded the supplies, a drop in the bucket compared to the need. Many of these buildings in Puerto Viejo still standing are now uninhabitable and will have to be demolished. And rescue workers continue to race against the clock, looking for survivors amid the ruins. As if destroyed buildings and infrastructure, hundreds still trapped, and tens of thousands homeless weren't enough. A lack of fresh water is the latest tragedy in the unfolding crisis in Ecuador. With temperatures in the 90s during the day, dehydration is becoming a real issue. City dwellers like these in the city of Manta are flocking to distribution centers looking for food, clothing, and fresh water. Throughout the area, people are getting desperate, and Operation Blessing is stepping in to help. Pastor Paul Candela heads a large church in Puerto Viejo that's working together with Operation Blessing.
Things are pretty difficult right now because as the hours and days go by, things get more complicated. The rescue teams will soon stop looking for survivors and just move forward with the recovery of those who have died in the rubble.
Church members are volunteering to help OB assemble and distribute hundreds of care packages with food and water.
We see a future where there will be a lot of suffering because employees without work means business owners without businesses, which means people won't be able to pay their bills and they won't have a way to get by. Everything affects everything else, and this will lead to big social problems in the future.
The Operation Blessing volunteers are working to alleviate people's suffering and save lives by reaching areas outside the city.
Right now we are focused on serving the community, going to outlying places that have no food or water, and giving out supplies.
And the situation is worst where thirsty people line the roads begging for water and getting more and more desperate with every car that passes by. Carmen Rivera's baby, John Paul, is only 3 weeks old. His mother is beside herself.
There is no milk or diapers for my baby. He can't nurse because I'm not making milk and his formula has run out. The stores are closed up because the buildings are all destroyed. We sent someone out to look for milk, but they couldn't find any.
It will likely be months before these residents can get water from their own taps again, and many here are afraid they won't be able to hold out that long. Operation Blessing will stay here as long as it takes, bringing water to the people who need it most. Chuck Holton, CBN News, Manta, Ecuador.
이번에는 일본 북부의 지진 피해 현장으로 가봅니다. 지진으로 보금자리를 잃은 이들은 현재 어떤 상황에 처해 있을까요? 함께 만나보시죠.
Recovery teams in southern Japan are still finding bodies buried beneath the rubble caused by last week's earthquakes. A magnitude 6.5 quake last Thursday night, followed by a 7.3 quake early Saturday morning, caused widespread damage. Eyewitness Keiko Fujimoto said the earthquake made a big rattling sound. There was a strong shaking which lasted a long time. We were eating dinner together as a church family. I heard people screaming, sound of glass breaking and things falling. I was really taken by surprise. The death toll in Japan has reached at least 48 people. Another 11 died from illnesses believed to be connected to the physical demands of evacuation. 3 people remain missing. More than 1,000 people were injured during the quakes, and 200,000 were evacuated to shelters. Still, in the midst of all the devastation, miracles are happening. Pastor Yoji Nakamura of Kumamoto Harvest Church, which is located in the quake zone, said there is a church near the epicenter that has totally collapsed. The pastor there was buried in the rubble. He managed to escape on his own, but his daughter in her late 20s was buried in the rubble for about 4 hours. She was rescued, and I believe is in the hospital now. Her life was saved. Operation Blessing Japan sent a 2-ton truck from Sendai to Kumamoto Harvest Church. The truck will be used by the church to deliver huge amounts of aid for at least 1 month. Operation Blessing International purchased generators, water, food, and hygiene items for the victims. The town of Mashiki was hit the hardest. 20 people lost their lives there. OB Japan delivered more than a ton of supplies to Mashiki. In addition, OB Japan took bottled water to an emergency shelter at a middle school in the quake zone. More than 100 vehicles were parked around the school, and many people who could not rest in the gymnasium were staying in their cars. Also, with so many aftershocks, some people are too afraid to stay indoors. Mark Martin, CBN News.
Coming up, as China cracks down on Christianity, a pastor's wife gives her life trying to protect her church.
다음 소식입니다. 얼마 전 중국 허난성에서는 교회 철거를 막으려던 한 목회자의 사모가 불도저에 밀려 흙에 묻힌 채 빠져나오지 못해 질식사한 끔찍한 사고가 있었습니다. 이 소식을 전한 미국 소재 중국 인권문제 연구기관인 차이나 에이드는 이 사고가 기독교 탄압의 심각성을 보여주는 극히 일부분이라고 주장했습니다. 자세한 소식 함께 만나보시죠.
The pastor and his wife stood in front of a bulldozer to keep it from destroying their church. That's when the demolition team leader ordered the driver to push them into the pit and bury them alive. The pastor escaped, but his wife died of suffocation. Local police say they're investigating the incident and 2 members of the demolition team have been detained. Bob Fu heads the Christian human rights group China Aid. He said this shows that Chinese officials will go to extreme lengths to stop the spread of Christianity.
I think the government, under the massive corruption and lack of legitimacy and the social unrest, really try to look for a scapegoat. And unfortunately, the independent churches are becoming increasingly a target that the government blamed for political instability. And the rapid, massive growth of Christianity has been regarded as a political threat.
Bob Fu also mentioned what happened in Henan province was the most inhumane way from the Chinese government to control the growth of Chinese churches. The tension between the Chinese government and the Chinese Christian community is increasing dramatically as more churches will be demolished. China Aid says persecution in China jumped 150% in the past year, with nearly 3,000 Christians detained and about 1,300 to jail terms. Despite the opposition, Chinese Christians in the Henan province are pressing forward in their faith, inspiring others to persevere as well. Meanwhile, organizations like China Aid will continue the fight for religious freedom. Mengfei Li for CBN News.
한편 영국 하원은 시리아와 이라크에서 계속 이어지고 있는 이슬람 무장 세력 IS의 만행을 집단 학살, 제노사이드로 규정했습니다.
The motion states Christians, Yazidis, and other ethnic and religious minorities in Iraq and Syria are suffering genocide at the hands of ISIS. It also recommends the International Criminal Court be given jurisdiction over those crimes.
이처럼 중동 지역에서의 기독교 박해 문제는 갈수록 심각해지고 있는데요. 최근 예루살렘에서 나타나고 있는 기독교 박해 증가 현상에 대해 좀 더 자세한 이야기를 나눠봤습니다.
How serious is the situation for Christians here in the Middle East?
Oh, I think it's very serious. I mean, we do a lot of work in, whether it's in Jordan, whether it's in Syria, whether it's in Turkey. We work in many different Middle Eastern countries, Iraq. That space is shrinking all the time for them. ISIS is sending a very clear and chilling signal when they line up 21 Ethiopians and cut their heads off. It means something. When they kidnap Christian women coming out of Assyria and put them into sexual slavery, when they execute the men in front of the family members, it means something. And there has been a mass exodus of Christians out of the Middle East, and this is where Christianity started. What I can say in the nearly 30 years that I've been working around the world is that over the last 10 years, 5 years, 2 years, I see this increasing speed of the fulfillment of prophecy. It's like a big river coming into a narrow channel and starting to pick up a lot of speed and intensity. So I can't see forward, but I can see where we are, and I can read the book, and wow, that's this, and that's this, and that's this, and whether it's in Ezekiel or Revelation or whatever, you see all of these things coming together, and this is going to be a front row seat to what happens right here.
That's exactly right.
And coming up, he's a world-class artist and a former atheist. We'll talk to him and see some of his amazing art after this.
런던에서 큰 유명세를 떨치고 있는 한 화가가 있습니다. 바로 찰리 매켓시인데요. 찰리 매켓시의 그림은 많은 이들의 사랑을 받고 있을 뿐 아니라 예수 그리스도의 복음을 전하는 데도 사용이 되고 있다고 합니다. 함께 만나보시죠.
Charlie Mackesy has been described as a world-class artist, selling his artwork to the likes of Whoopi Goldberg and Sting.
When did you discover that you had artistic ability?
Good question. I mean, I think I probably knew that I could draw at school, but I think you need a reason to draw.
He found that reason about 25 years ago in a London park. An atheist at the time, he says he had a feeling that there must be more to this than meets the eye.
Jesus quietly introduced me to a journey into finding people really beautiful, which is how my art really began. because I felt inside me he was going, look how beautiful is that guy sitting on that bench. And I would never have noticed him before.
In this bronze sculpture called The Return of the Prodigal Son, Mackesy captures the raw emotion of that familiar parable. It's located here at Holy Trinity Brompton, one of the most influential churches in the Church of England.
Didn't believe any of it at all.
Mackesy is a popular speaker here, particularly with unbelievers.
Charlie appeals to people outside the church because he's not what they expect. When you have a sort of picture of the evangelist, you don't picture Charlie Mackesy.
So I decided that what I'd do is, I was in bare feet anyway, so I stood on the loo seat like this.
He can be a bit unorthodox, like the day he describes hearing a gospel song for the first time at a music festival inside a portable toilet that was so filthy he stood on the seat to avoid the overflow. The song pierced through his atheism, moving him to tears.
And he's very humble, very unpretentious. He tells stories against himself.
I didn't really know what had happened to me, but as I was feeling it, my left foot slipped. And I went up to here.
While Mackesy's stories may not be for the faint of heart, he points out that those closest to Jesus, the disciples, could also be described as objectionable.
I realized that they were naughty people, unreligious people, people who didn't really have a religious etiquette, who probably wouldn't be that welcome in church. I thought Christianity was be clean, come to church, be nice, don't use the F word, and you'll be accepted and liked, because that's the thing, it's a meritocracy. And if you want to belong, be a certain way. And he says, you're loved. You're loved as you are, covered in whatever it is, on the inside or out.
I think he's the finest evangelist in the UK at the moment. People outside the church, I would rather take them to hear Charlie than anybody else in the UK.
And he wasn't joking.
That's completely ridiculous.
This all comes as a shock to Mackesy, which is understandable given his life story.
We had kind of religious things at school, and I hated it. We sang about God, but I didn't like God. I didn't think he existed, but if he did, I didn't like him.
How would you have described or defined a Christian?
Oh, someone who pretends to be good and judges people, and believes in an invisible friend that they've created.
After that strange yet profound encounter with Oh Happy Day, Mackesy moved to New Orleans, immersing himself in black gospel music and jazz.
And I wanted to say to my friends, there's a spirit behind this that is incredible. It's so full of life. Look at it. Look at these people. Look what they believe. Look what it does to them.
Mackesy sees his art foremost as a way to introduce God to the people he loves. Like Prodigal Daughter, for a friend who struggled with bipolar disorder.
You know, if you try to explain your words like, oh, God loves you, or you're loved, they don't really carry any meaning at all. To be held is somewhere she always wanted. So I said, this is what God is like.
Mackesy's art is also a record of God's presence in his own life.
I really wanted to play the piano, but I was really rubbish. And for me, the angel represents the voice of God saying, I'm with you. I love you. We'll go there together. I'll help you with this. You're not alone.
And this painting, simply titled Known.
But there was one day when I was on my bike crossing a bridge in London, and it lasted about 11 seconds. But it was this kind of, you're known, you're loved. This God exists and he loves you, he knows you, you're known, you're fully known, you're fully known. Warts, darkness. You don't have to pretend to be anything.
John Jessup, CBN News, London.
하늘이 하나님의 영광을 선포한다. 성경은 이렇게 말하고 있는데요. 미국 항공우주국 나사가 공개한 영상도 바로 그 사실을 증명하고 있네요.
The space agency used ultra-high definition image to release a vibrant video of the aurora borealis lights. The video was created using time lapses shot directly from the International Space Station. The video shows both the aurora borealis and the aurora australis, a natural light show from the space that occurs when atoms collide in the Earth's atmosphere.
미국 웨스트버지니아 북부 지역에서는 아주 놀라운 일이 벌어졌습니다. 어느 학교에서 시작된 영적 대부흥이 도시 전체로 번지고 있다고 하는데요. 오늘의 마지막 소식입니다.
For the last several nights, the large sports complex known as the Fieldhouse in Williamson, West Virginia, where I used to cheerlead, George, has been packed with people of all ages crying out to God.
And that you would enter our hearts, God, and that you would affect every family that's associated with my school. Lord, you're going to break the chains.
Because this will only grow, God. No matter where the people in this stadium go, we will share it with the world, God.
And you are sharing it with the world. The revival is seeing hundreds of students come forward to give their hearts to Jesus. Pastor Mitch Bias of the Regional Church of God in Del Barton says prayer plus desperation have paved the way for this spiritual breakthrough among the young people.
It's a climactic time. I think that many years of creating a spiritual vacuum inside of kids by not teaching them the true reality that there's a destiny in God. And I think when they hear a message of hope that really speaks to them, because they're kind of hanging in a spiritual limbo, I think they press into it quickly to take it because they know that's the truth.
Bias says this isn't a church or a denominational thing, but a God thing. He believes what's happening in southern West Virginia has the potential to spread to other counties, states, and even the nation.
오늘 준비한 소식은 여기까지입니다. 저는 다음 주에 다시 찾아오겠습니다. 시청해주신 여러분 고맙습니다.